Hey guys, it's Peyton, and today I am finally going to be reviewing The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes by Suzanne Collins. Now, I've been putting this video off a little bit because if you haven't been online or you haven't noticed, you look up this book and there's an overpouring amount of rant reviews and just bad reviews, which is totally fine, but it made me scared. I loved this book. I gave it a 5 out of 5 stars, and while I am not a very critical reader, so take that as you will, I am just gonna say I enjoyed the book. I enjoyed it, and I personally felt like it did what I was hoping for as a prequel and a book that is going to be a villain origin story following such a terrible man. And for me, it did what I wanted. But I will say I can totally see why there's people that do not like this book, especially people who are not really into villain origin stories. I haven't really read many, but that is something I'm interested in, and a lot of franchises have done villain origin stories, and I saw a lot of people being mad about that and just being like, why? Why not Haymitch? And I feel you. Like, we love our past characters like Haymitch, Finnick, and Joanna. Like, they would make great stories. But personally, I feel like if we had gotten their perspective and their games, it could have been really repetitive, and I feel like people would have complained and said, like, this is repetitive, why was this made? We didn't need this. And also, the ending of the book would be pretty hopeless, and the games would continue every year. There wouldn't be hope that anything was going to change, and there wouldn't be much development about that. It would just be really similar to the first Hunger Games book, but that one kind of had, like, still a sprinkle of, like, maybe we can do something, you know? Because she rebelled the capital. And the only other person that could probably do that is Haymitch, because he used the force field to his advantage and the capital didn't like that. But I still don't feel like that gives the same vibe of Katniss's, because I just don't think so. This video I made bullet points for. It's not going to be the most organized thing. I'm not a great speaker. I don't sound smart. I don't know what to say to make me sound smart, but you know, here we are, and I just want to say that The Hunger Games is my favorite series. It means a lot to me, and I was just thankful that there was going to be a new book written by Suzanne Collins at all, whether it was Hunger Games or not. From the beginning, I was just so hyped. I will say President Snow was one of my options for who would be the narrator, because we always knew that it was 64 years before the original series, and that would leave us at the 10th Hunger Games, and the only people that were alive that could tell the story that we knew was President Snow, Mags, and possibly the first winner of District 12, or just somebody that we never met before. And while I think this book could have been something if it was told from Sejanus Plinth's point of view or Lucy Gray, I still feel like it wouldn't have had the same flavor to it. It wouldn't have shown us the insides of the capital the way that we got it. And the thing that I really appreciate about this book is how much backstory we truly got about the Hunger Games in general. We found out how it began. We found out how President Snow is involved, the ideas that he made for it, and how he really got into it to begin with as a mentor, as he becomes a manipulator and gets his way into the capital and continues to create ideas for it. This is what I want to say. I feel like rant reviews, they're fun. They are pretty funny half the time, and I feel like that's what people want most of the time. They don't want to see the good reviews, and that's probably why most people who really liked it haven't really come out with videos on it. And I'll be honest, I haven't really watched many people's videos yet, because after I read the book and after I made all those videos about it, I was like needing a break. I needed a moment to just digest what I read and everything that happened, and I didn't feel like watching anybody's videos yet, and I definitely want to do that now since I'm kind of ready to do it. But at the time I just wasn't ready. But I was seeing all these thumbnails and titles of people just hating on the book, which is totally fine. I just want to be allowed to like the book too. And I'm already aware that this video is probably gonna flop. I don't think people are gonna really care, especially a month later, like why I liked the book, but I don't care. Like, I want to talk about it, so I'm here. The negative reviews are always gonna do better. You know, I would do a negative review if I had those feelings. Getting into my notes, personally, I feel like this was a villain origin story done right. And for me, I didn't feel any empathy for him really at all, other than like a few things that happened to him, like the cannibal situation. But overall, like, I knew he was a villain. He had a weird mindset that was gross and disgusting. He viewed people in a gross manner, and I can see why people wouldn't want to be in the head of someone like that. Like, that's disturbing. But it also can make for a really interesting story and perspective, just seeing the makings of such a terrible person and how such terrible worlds can be created. Because we see in the Hunger Games trilogy the terrible world that has happened, but we don't really know how it got to that point. And from this book, we can see why. Like, what happened and what led to such crazy, horrific things to happen, and what led President Snow, because I don't think, like, from the start, from page 1, I did not think he was a good guy. And maybe some of that was the way he was raised or what, but whether he was raised the way he was or what, he still continued to make horrible decisions. He continued to be so calculating and manipulative of everybody he talks to, especially my baby Sejanus Plinth. He deserved so much better, and Lucy Gray. He always had an ulterior motive, and he always was trying to get the best out of every situation for him. He wasn't really thinking about anyone but himself. And even when it came to Lucy Gray and that romance they had, you can tell it was obsessive. Like, this was not a romance. This was from the point of view of a man who was disgusting and who was pretty much trying to prey on her and viewed her as an object. Ugh, it was gross. You can also see why Lucy Gray might have fallen for that, because from her perspective, you don't see what's going on in his head. You don't know what the future is. You don't know what he's gonna do in the future and all the terrible things he is going to do to people. And you can see why she was kind of like taking him on her side, and oh man, do I feel bad for her. I also appreciated, I already said this, all the background info we got, like the hanging tree songs. I love the songs, and I kind of had a little theory that we would see some of the songs, because from a main character, or one of the main characters is a singer. That was just perfect timing, perfect time to sprinkle in our Deep in the Meadow song and the hanging tree. And like, oh my god, like that, when I read that, I was an emotional wreck, because it just felt so satisfying, and the pieces came together, and we finally knew the history behind that. I never knew how badly I wanted that until I got it. That's another thing I want to say, is this book I don't think is fully necessary for your enjoyment of the trilogy. It's not at all. This is kind of just an add-on for people that want to read more in depth, want to learn more about the world and how the Hunger Games began and the makings of Panem and everything like that. Just the Capitol's point of view and how things got so crazy. You can see how that started to happen. I forgot the point I was trying to make. But I'm just saying that no, you don't need it to love the trilogy. And if you're one of those people that hasn't read the trilogy yet and you're wondering, do you read this book first? I think you should read the trilogy first, because you get the love for the characters and the world, and then you would be intrigued enough to find out more about the world and the makings of everything in this one. I also think Sejanus Plinth's story was so important to see. I feel like Snow and Sejanus were on the opposite ends of the stick, or whatever that phrase is. Snow is a person who is born and raised in the capital. He is privileged, and he views people from the districts as less than him. And Sejanus Plinth, he's rich. He actually has more money than Snow, but he is born from the districts. He grew up there. He saw the real shit that went down in there. He actually has morals and a heart and a soul, and he can actually feel for these people. The thing is, if Sejanus had been the narrator, you know, we wouldn't have gotten the story after he freaking died. And dear lord, am I mad that he died. And Snow, you're a bitch for that. I forgot to mention this in my reading vlog that I had about how disgusting it was that Snow, after being the reason that Sejanus died and knowing that he allowed himself to be taken in by the Plinth family as like their son, knowing that he got their son killed. And they probably never knew that. I'm sure they're dead by the time of the trilogy, and they probably never knew the true story behind their son's death and how he was just trying to do what was right. He was so disgusted by the Capitol to the point where he was ready to go anywhere but there. I also found it interesting the differences between the games in this book and the games that we saw in the trilogy, and how those were so extravagant and crazy. And this one is in like a sporting arena. There's like stands and people are all sitting around and they're just like watching. Holy shit, like it's just crazy. And you see Snow starting to get ideas for like the future and like, oh, maybe we can do this and this and this. And like we know that those things do come into play in the games in the modern day of the Hunger Games trilogy. And I feel like those were so satisfying, and maybe not everybody would notice some of those things if they hadn't reread the trilogy. There's so many things actually I feel like that were sprinkled in there, like people's names like Heavensby and Flickerman, and just so many little Easter eggs in here. I feel like if you haven't read the series since like middle school or something, you might not pick up on those and might not be as satisfied because you probably missed out on those. Dude, I don't know, like the references that I kept finding like made my Hunger Games heart so incredibly happy, and it was just everything, especially with the roses and the poison. We see the beginnings of like why he likes roses and the connection with his grandma and his mother, and also when he starts to get ideas with poison. I love the last scene where he poisons Highbottom, because we really see like, wow, this is when it starts. Because we know from Finnick's story about how he found out how Snow would just poison everybody in his path so he could slither his way to the top like a little snake that he is. It was just so interesting. It was also crazy to see the differences, the way the tributes were treated here and how they're treated in the beginning of Katniss's story. He actually seemed to feel bad for the tributes a little bit, just being like, wow, they're being treated like animals. They're thrown in a cage in like a zoo. I think he took that feelings that he had, how he thought that was really gross, even though there's so many grosser things happening, so I don't know why he's not bothered by those. He took that, and I know he had to be the reason that the tributes got treated so well with all the food and all the extravagance and everything. Like, that was him. Like, he was bothered by that. So he was like, okay, well, it's okay if we kill them all, if, you know, we give them a good life before. That is his twisted mindset that we saw from him. I also think Dr. Gall is such an important and integral character in his life, because you can tell how much she was manipulating him. She was preying on his bad sides that she could see in him and pulling it out as much as possible. Because there was routes that he could have taken and been a good person. But no, every single time he took the way that would make him a monster. More and more as he would talk to Dr. Gall in every situation with her, I just felt like she was so like messing with his mind, and you could see why he would start to think that the games were necessary in the way that he thinks they are, and how he feels like people are animals and like they need something to control them like this. And you can just see how his mindset could reach that point. And that's the thing that I was worried about this book, is like it wouldn't be realistic to see his descent to evil. Like, why does he start thinking these things? But I feel like, especially through Dr. Gall, we could see how he came to these decisions, and it felt realistic, the terrible decisions he started to make, especially by the end of the book. I also freaking thought it was fantastic to see the beginnings of his hatred to Mockingjays while he was in District 12, which, by the way, gives me chills that he ever lived in District 12. That just pisses me off even more. Also, knowing that he is the one that bombed District 12 later on, and knowing that he knew that place. He knew about the hanging tree. And that's another thing that really gives me chills, is how Lucy Gray sang the hanging tree song and it became something that he hated. And later on, Katniss Everdeen sings that song. And she sings the Deep in the Meadow song. Like, these are songs that come back to haunt him. Lucy Gray will always haunt him. And I think he could never fully shake that feeling. I also feel like Katniss reminded him of Lucy Gray. And in some way he respected Katniss a little bit, but he didn't like that she was trying to do what he didn't want to happen. He didn't want the Hunger Games to end. He wanted everything to keep going. He wanted to stay in power, but he still respected her and everything. Like, you know, did anyone else get that vibe? Like, every time he talked to her, he seemed to have somewhat of an understanding of her, but in the end it didn't matter because she wasn't doing what he wanted. That meant he wanted her dead. And I feel like some of that must have been that he must have had memories of Lucy Gray coming back, especially with the songs. I just wish we could see that reaction. Him knowing those songs and the chills that he probably got from it, because it's in his past and it's probably from one of the darkest parts of his memory that he would like to forget, when he was convincing himself that Lucy Gray is not really a district girl, so I like her. And I also can see why people wouldn't like this book. You're reading about someone that you don't like. Like, you're not supposed to like him. I don't like him. Never once did I like him. Was I intrigued by him? Absolutely. I wanted to see how he got so evil. And we got that. And if that's not your cup of tea, if you don't want to be in such an evil headspace, that's totally cool. Like, I can totally see why that wouldn't be for you. I don't know, my Hunger Games heart, like, any information I was gonna get, I was here for it. Here's another thing. I feel like this book, once again, just like the original trilogy, is like a warning to our world, like what we could become. And so easily I feel like we could become this. And I remember this being announced, and it said that Suzanne Collins really felt that, especially in current times, that the story needed to be told. And for me, I took that as she's been seeing President Trump be the evilness that he is, and wanted to do like a warning, like what will happen, and remind us if we have such a terrible leader in place. I just took that as a big warning to us, and like what a terrible person could really do to destroy. We see the beginnings of him, and then in the original trilogy we know all the terrible things that he did. And like, I just feel like she is warning the world, like, no, we need to fix ourselves. This is not okay. She also did a lot of interweaving of political theory, which honestly my brain does not have the capacity to fully understand things like that. I'm not like a history buff or anything, but I know it's like, I forgot who it was. It's like John Locke and Rousseau or something. She has a bunch of political theorists as the quotes at the beginning of the book, so it's very obviously intentional that she is doing that. And I really love Elena the Great's video on the political theory in this book. If you want a good explanation on it, definitely go watch her video, because she's really into political theory and she could explain it way better than I ever could. And I think it's so smart. I feel like this is more than just a story about some old man. Like, it's a warning to the world, and I feel like she was balancing the ideas of those different thinkers, those philosophers, and just testing the waters with them and seeing the balance between them and like the fight between them. I don't know, I'm not smart. I can't tell you. I also feel that making this President Snow be the main character, I feel like this offered a new perspective about Panem that we never would have gotten. We needed the perspective of the Capitol, at least in my opinion. If we had another tribute and everything, like, it would just be way too similar to the original trilogy, way too repetitive. It would be a freaking Twilight moment. She keeps rewriting the same book over and over again. Yes, I would have loved to been in Lucy Gray's head while the games were happening. Yes, I would have loved to seen Sejanus Plint's mental space as well, but I also feel like it just wouldn't have hit the same, and how scary and terrifying this book was, and the big warning that I feel like it really was to the world. And I will say, as much as I really did not like seeing him being attracted to Lucy Gray, I also feel like it really shows how manipulative he was. He's supposed to be attractive. Honestly, all I could picture when I was reading this book was the old man that we saw in the movies, like Donald Sutherland or something. I just could not picture an attractive young guy. It just wasn't happening. But you can see how manipulative he was, especially as a young man striving to get to the top. And I just think that was important to show that. You can see why she would be attracted to him. How is she supposed to know he's evil fully? Because obviously he's in the Capitol. Like, that's not cute. But not everybody in the Capitol is evil, you know? Not everybody in District 2 is evil. Like, I don't stand behind that. There's always good people in the mix, and Sejanus Plinth is another example of that. I also want to point out that I thought Dean Highbottom was super interesting, because the whole book we could tell that he was like the only one that did not like President Snow, like specifically. And we didn't really know why. Like, you know, I supported him in that. I don't like President Snow either. So I was like, okay, like, we don't like him. Like, you're figuring it out. And that's probably why he was one of the first people that he killed. We've known from this book that Highbottom was the one that apparently came up with the idea for the Hunger Games. He did, but he has a massive grudge on Snow because Snow's father was friends with Highbottom, and Highbottom decided he did not want to turn in the school assignment where he proposed the idea of the Hunger Games. Snow's dad turned it in behind his back, gave it to Dr. Gall, who's obviously the most insane person ever. Like, she's disgusting. She creates the mutts, which, by the way, that's an Easter egg to all the freaking mutts that we see in the trilogy. He is the reason that the Hunger Games started. It was his idea, but he didn't want to actually turn it in. And Snow's dad turned it in, which started and sparked the whole idea of kids fighting to the death in arenas. And I can imagine why he has such a grudge on Snow, because now he's labeled as the creator and he didn't actually want that to happen. I'm not saying he's a good guy, because coming up with that idea to begin with is disgusting. It's just so interesting to see how he always hated him and he figured him out, and he always knew that the Snows were not cute. I also haven't mentioned Tigress at all. I really like Tigress, and I really wish we knew, like, at what point she realized that Snow was not good. Like, when did she know that she didn't love him anymore and that she hated him? We all know that in the original trilogy, she helped Katniss and the rebels and hid them and pretty much knew that they were gonna kill Snow. She smiled when Katniss said that she was gonna kill him. That just proves that she really does not like Snow anymore. And in this book, you can tell she loves him. Like, she cares about him. It breaks my heart for her, because I feel like she was a good person, and once again, another example of someone that, like, was on the wrong side of it, but, like, what could they really do at that point? Like, they were stuck, and their freaking cousin was the evil mastermind behind it, and oh my god, I would love to know more about her. And I also keep forgetting that there's gonna be a movie for this. We'll see whenever the frick that happens. No, Timothée Chalamet should not play President Snow. Before anybody says it. Hey guys, I am inserting the video right now because I realized that I filmed this video a few days ago and I never really went into things I didn't like about the book. And I feel really stupid for that. I just finished doing my live show with the Hunger Games crew. I'll have them linked all down below. Every month we read one of the Hunger Games books together and did a live show on one of our channels. It was so much fun, and I'm really glad we did that and did it for the anticipation for the new book, the Ballad, obviously. And it was just a great time. And in this live show, we actually had a lot of, like, conflicting feelings, and we disagreed on things, and that's, like, good because it really gets you thinking. And obviously, I've said that there's things that I don't like about this book, and I just didn't really go over them in the video. Yes, I loved this book. Was it because I was just so excited and I just read for entertainment, and this book gave me the entertainment that I was looking for and what I was hoping for? That doesn't mean everything was perfect. I didn't like the romance with President Snow and Lucy Gray. I feel like she was just someone I was hoping would be smarter and would figure him out earlier than she did. She only really figured out that he was bad, like, during the last scene that they had together. And I was really hoping going into this book that she would be really manipulative herself and catch on to what he was doing in his obsessive, like, love infatuation that he had for her. I was hoping that she would be smarter than that. And another thing I was really hoping for in this book was that there would be dual point of views, and we would get Snow's point of view as well as Lucy Gray, because I feel like we would have gotten a lot more if we also had her perspective. We would have connected with her more, and though I really enjoyed her character, I still feel like their backstory and just more character information, like, needed to be there to fully have us stand behind her. And it was mentioned in our live show that maybe it's because this is the first book and there's not going to be any more following, most likely. And with the original trilogy, we had 3 books to kind of connect with them and learn people's backstories. And in the first book, we didn't really learn that much about people other than really Katniss. Like, that was our main focus in that book. We didn't get much backstory on everybody else. And that's kind of how it was in this book as well. And since it was longer, I guess we kind of expected to get more out of that, but overall I still obviously enjoyed the characters like Sejanus and Lucy Gray, and I really enjoyed seeing the manipulative mindset of Snow and just his descent to evil. Obviously, I've already talked about this in the other clips. Another thing I didn't like was there was times where it was really boring, and that's what I saw a lot of people saying around like Twitter and like YouTube. There was many boring moments, and what really got me through those was a bunch of the Easter eggs that sprinkled in that got me so excited to continue reading the book. And especially the beginning of part 3, that was like very slow. Like it was kind of hard to get through, but I was just so excited to see what was going to happen at the end of the book. Like I just wanted to know what was going on, that I was able to still read and push through. I've read this book in 2 days, and I really think I need to reread it to see if my love for this book is from just how excited and everything, or do I genuinely love the material in the book. And I think I still will always have like love for it and be into this book and think it is a fun addition to the Hunger Games world, but I definitely don't think it's necessary if you don't want to read it. Like, it's fine. Like, I don't know like how I was portraying it in my other clip, but I don't want anybody to think that if you didn't like this book that I'm mad at you. Like, no, you're allowed to not like this book. I can genuinely see why people wouldn't like this book, and there's things that people critique and say about it that I agree with, but overall my experience with it, the excitement I had for it, like, it was just good for me, but that's not going to be good for everyone, and that's totally fine. And I just want y'all to know that. I do think there's like loose ends, like with Clemencia and wanting to know what was happening to her. Also, the actual games was pretty anticlimactic, and I think that was the point Suzanne was going for, because she had like a whole statement about like, if you are like bored by the games, or like you're disappointed that there wasn't more going on with them, like what does that say about us? Like that we wanted the killing of children to be super interesting, and that's like a mind F all in itself. And I feel like her main point with this book was political theory. She's very interested in war. If you read any of her interviews, like she's very like into those things, and I can see that is what she was trying to go for more than anything else. She was trying to do like a character study on President Snow's brain. And I think that was successful, in my opinion. I thought it was really cool to be in his brain to see like how he justifies things in his brain, and like how he slowly got worse and worse. And another thing to critique is how it ended. I really liked the last scene where he poisons Highbottom. It's when we really get like that sliver of like, oh, he is going crazy. I enjoyed that. But also you just want more. Like you want to see him become the president. You want to see him really slither his way to the top. In this book, we really just see how his mental state reaches the point before he slithers his way to the top. I enjoyed that, yes, but we also didn't get like seeing him go to the top like Finnick Odair described for us in the trilogy. And I kind of really wish we saw that. But at the same time, I really don't want a sequel to this book. I think she needs to just set it aside, and hopefully she'll write something new. I genuinely love this author and support her, and will read anything that she has further. I'm wanting to read her past series that she wrote. I might do that for a reading vlog, because I've always been intrigued to read her other stuff. I just definitely think this is a hit or miss for people. And I just feel like you genuinely won't know if you like this or not fully until you read the book. And I also just don't like seeing people bandwagoning and like they haven't even read it and they just say they hate the book, blah, 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 blah. You can be like not interested in the book. Like that's fine. Like if you don't want to read from President Snow's perspective, if you think that's just not going to be something you will enjoy, then yeah, don't read it. Like that's fine. I just don't like seeing like everybody hating it. Even from the start of when it was announced, people saying it was going to be the worst book ever. And I'm like, you can't judge a book until you read it. You can decide not to read a book though. That's a different story. This video is so long, so I'm probably going to cut it off now, but I hope this like adds a little bit to my review, and I don't want it to seem like I didn't think there was any flaws with this book. There definitely was. There was things that I was hoping for, like you can go look at my theories video, like things that I was just hoping to see, and like definitely the POV thing, and maybe the movie that we're gonna get could fix that, because we could see Lucy Gray within the games. We could get from her perspective in the film that's happening. Overall, it was an enjoyable experience for me, and I will never forget that. If you haven't read this book and you watched this vlog for some reason, I say if you are in the slightest bit interested, I say give it a try. But if you just don't think it's going to be for you, like, that's fine. Just don't read it. Like, it's not necessary for the series. It's more of like an additional add-on. It gives you a lot of backstory on how the Hunger Games were created, which is super interesting, but you don't need it for full enjoyment of the trilogy. Absolutely not. Okay, I think that's going to be it for this review. I know it's probably all over the place. It was kind of just a discussion, and I am going to have a live show. I don't know if that is going to be already out by the time this video comes out, or not, but I guess we'll see. Let me know your thoughts on this book. Thank you so much for watching this video. Like it, comment down below, have a good day. Please subscribe, make sure to follow all my social medias, which are linked down below, and go click the bell button, which is right by the subscribe button, which you should have already clicked, and goodbye.